Hey everyone, welcome to Great Lakes Church. My name is Carson, and I gotta tell you before we get into our weekly message that we're a community of people helping people find and follow Jesus. We're based out of Southeast Wisconsin. We have physical locations in Kenosha and Racine, but if you're listening to this or watching this, you've found our online presence. We share content on our YouTube and our podcast platforms wherever you listen, and we love that you're a part. If you want to know more about what's going on here at Great Lakes Church, you can find out more at greatlakeschurch.com or check out our central hub. But until then, everything you need is going to be in the description, so enjoy the message, and we'll catch you next time.
Hello. Guys, it is good to see you, and I mean that. I cannot believe I'm saying this, but we are 1 month away from our Easter services. Yeah. So we have a lot of changes, a lot of things happening around here. So let me just walk through Easter at Great Lakes Church, just so we're all on the same page. All right, Kenosha campus for Easter is going to have 4 service time options. We've got a Wednesday, April 5th option at 6:30 p.m. We have a Sunday, April 9th option at 8 a.m., 9 a.m., and 10:30. Typically, it's just 9 a.m. and 10:30. Right? We're doing it at 8 a.m. We will feed you breakfast. You will get a free pass into heaven if you show up at 8 a.m., right? I'm pushing you. We gotta have some people at 8 a.m., and we're super excited to do this and to celebrate Easter. Racine, 9 and 10:30 a.m., which is what they have every single week. All right, so the one additional service is our 8 a.m. Everything else would be like our regular schedule. For those of you who join us online or you listen to our podcast, we'll be ready to go on demand at 9 a.m. starting Easter Sunday. 9 a.m. Easter Sunday for those of you joining us virtually. Now, at all of our services for Easter, all of them, including our Wednesday evening gathering and our 8 a.m. gathering, we are offering services or programs for our kids. And as you can imagine, every time we do something for our kids, we have fun. We go out of the, we go extra than what we even would on a regular week, which is on a regular week's fun. And so be thinking about who you can invite. Now, twice a year, I will ask you that if you do not volunteer at Great Lakes Church on a regular basis, like you're not going to be volunteering somewhere on Easter, I am going to ask you very directly, would you volunteer this Easter? Would you help us to be ready to welcome people and communicate the message? We want you here and we're ready for you. All right, so here's what we're gonna ask. That if you would consider that you would volunteer with kids at any of the services, you would put your name on this yellow connection card, your email, and that you would, in the other section, just this white section here, that you would put Kids Easter. All right, so name, email, if you feel comfortable, put your cell phone, but put Kids Easter and someone will contact you. By the way, if you live in the area and you normally join us online, this would be a great time to join us in person. All right, so are you ready for Easter? Yes. All right, we got 4 weeks to amp up because we're gonna need a little more than that. Now, every year since 1959, Neiman Marcus has put together a Christmas catalog of extravagant gift ideas. You can imagine that most of the gifts in that catalog are really, really expensive. Some are actually, reasonably priced, right? And the average person, if they chose to, they could buy it. But lots of expensive things, and it's not just products. A lot of them, of what they offer are experiences. So this past Christmas, they offered an experience which was a basketball matchup with Scottie Pippen and his son, Scottie Pippen Jr. All right, now here's the deal. When Scottie Pippen played for the Bulls, he was number 33. So it just makes sense that they would price this at $333,333. Another gift option in this past year's catalog was a trip to Paris. It was $65,000. And part of this trip to Paris was this experience of being able to customize your own personal fragrance with one of the world's most celebrated perfumers, Francis Kurkdjian. If you wanted to buy a Bulgari watch, it would set you back about $20,000. All right, now here's the interesting thing. If you gave me a watch that cost $20,000, I'd be super appreciative, but personally, I would never buy a watch that cost $20,000 if I was gonna wear it. Someone might be able to convince me, well, you should do it for an investment. Okay, but I'm not gonna wear a watch that costs $20,000. You know this, that when it comes to the value of things, we all put different amounts of value on different things, right? Because supply and demand affects the value of something. Whether or not it has personal meaning to you and it's sentimental to you determines its value. So I could pass a microphone around and ask, what is the most valuable thing other than maybe your house or your lake house? What is the most valuable thing that you own? And we'd all have different answers, right? Some would say, well, it's my car, or it's this technology I have, or it's this jewelry that I own, right? We'd all have different answers. And then that answer might even change if I say, okay, your house is burning down right now. What are the most valuable things in that house that you need to get out? You'll be like, my kids, my animals, my pets. The answer would change. Maybe photographs, you got some old school photographs, right? The answer would change just based on the scenario. Well, 3,000 years ago, King Solomon of Israel, he literally was the wealthiest man on the planet. All right, so he owns so many possessions. He has so much of value, and he actually writes about the things he owns in the book of Ecclesiastes. It was a book he authored, and he talks about it. He says, talks about a personal staff that he has, right? More than 10,000 servants. Solomon had incredible amounts of real estate and palaces and gardens and parks. He had a private zoo with exotic animals from around the world. He had a throne that was decorated with ivory and overlaid with gold. Solomon collected large amounts of gold, large amounts of silver, so much so that silver became worthless to King Solomon because he had so much of it. At any point, he had access to entertainment and comedy. He could just say, hey, this is what I want, and people would make it happen for him. And so Solomon in the book of Ecclesiastes writes about all this stuff of value that he has, this stuff that he owns. And he says very pointedly, he says, I collected great sums of silver and gold. I had everything a man could desire. I had it all. A little bit later on, he writes this. He says, anything I wanted, I would take. I denied myself no pleasure. So he's crazy rich. On top of that, he's famous, right? He's a king, he's powerful. Under Solomon's leadership, Israel went from a tiny run of a nation to a global superpower. So he has wealth, right? He's got money, he's got fame, he's got power. In addition to that, Solomon had vast amounts of wisdom. Leaders from around the world would seek out Solomon. They would travel to Jerusalem to meet with him, to get his advice, to get his counsel on a variety of topics. So he's got money, he's got fame, he's got power, he's got wisdom. And Solomon says, if I went around and I put a price tag on each of these things, right at the top of the list, the most valuable of anything would be wisdom. Here's what he writes about wisdom. He says, joyful is the person who finds wisdom, the one who gains understanding. For wisdom is more profitable than silver, and her wages are better than gold. Wisdom is more precious than rubies. Nothing you desire can compare with her. Solomon says, I've got Bitcoin and Rolex watches, I've got yachts, I've got season tickets to all of my favorite sports teams. But what's more valuable than any of that is wisdom. And we hear Solomon say that, or we read his words and we're like, lame. Solomon, give me a shot at that stuff. I'll tell you what's at the top of the list, right? And it just seems like he's exaggerating, but he's not. He's actually making a really good point. What Solomon is trying to communicate is it doesn't matter how much money you have. If you don't know how to manage that money, you're going to be under a lot of financial pressure. It doesn't matter how much power or fame you have. If you don't know how to navigate the temptations that come with power and fame, you're going to make decisions that shipwreck your life. Right? It doesn't really matter how many people you know, how many numbers are in your cell phone. If you don't have social skills, if you don't have some sort of emotional intelligence, you're not going to have a lot of real friends. And so Solomon makes it clear. He says possessing wisdom is incredibly valuable. Here's something else he writes about wisdom. He says, above all and before all, do this. Get wisdom. Write this at the top of your list. Get understanding. Throw your arms around her. Believe me, you won't regret it. Never let her go. She'll make your life glorious. He says, get wisdom. Throw your arms around her. And I love this because throughout his book, what Solomon does is he personifies wisdom, and he uses the word wisdom, and he talks about wisdom as though it were a female, as though it is a woman who is constantly knocking at your door, who's constantly calling out to you, who's constantly wanting to be embraced by you. And so today what we're doing is we're launching a brand new teaching series that we're going to be in for several weeks called Foolproofing Your Life. Foolproofing Your Life. Now, along with the kickoff of our teaching series, we're actually kicking off our group season as well. And so we have a bunch of groups at Great Lakes Church. Some are Saturday serves, and they meet for specific projects. But a lot of our groups meet during the week, and they're discussion-based groups in which they talk about the stuff we discuss through our weekly messages. And so if you're in one of those groups, just know on Sunday afternoons, you can always go to greatlakeschurch.com/current series. All right, greatlakeschurch.com/current series, and you can see the questions that will be for your group in that particular week. Now, if you're not in a group that discusses the weekly talk, you can still go here. I'd encourage you to. It's just a way of getting your mind thinking and broadening your understanding on this stuff and really considering something. So greatlakeschurch.com/current series. We're going to be focusing on the topic of wisdom. We're looking at key verses in the ancient book of Proverbs. All right, Proverbs is in our Bible. And Proverbs is not like a lot of books in our Bible. It's not like historical narrative. It's not a bunch of poetry. It's not prophetic messages. It's not these dramatic stories of men and women who did heroic things, for God. Like Proverbs, that's not what Proverbs is. Proverbs is exactly what a proverb is, right? It's a book filled with lots of short instructions for how to live a fulfilling life. That's what a proverb is. That's what, right? Proverbs are brief statements or short phrases about how life generally works. In other words, if you do this, if you go this direction, here's most likely what the result's going to be. Not every time, not every scenario, but most of the time, here's what you should expect. And every culture has different proverbs. All right? So let me just give you some examples. You'll recognize these. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, yeah. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Don't make a mountain out of a molehill. Yeah, we've heard these, right? Necessity is the mother of invention. Probably my favorite one is learn from your parents' mistakes, practice birth control. All right, those are proverbs. And throughout this teaching series, what we're going to do is we're going to look at several different proverbs jam-packed with wisdom. I'm guessing you already know this, but there is a big difference between knowledge and wisdom. A big difference, right? Knowledge is possessing information. That's what knowledge is. I've got information. Wisdom is the ability to make good decisions based on the information available. Right? Knowledge, possessing information. Our world is not short on information. We're drowning in information. If you need information on anything, if you need knowledge on anything, if you need to know about something, all you need to do is go to Google or YouTube and you'll find what you're looking for. So back in January of this year, my 17-year-old son, Jaden, he got himself a 2011 Cadillac SRX. All right? He is a high roller, ladies and gentlemen. Right? 17 years old, he is looking good. But of course, when you buy a vehicle that's 12 or 13 years old, it's going to have some issues. And we knew when we bought it that one of the headlights had to be completely replaced. The previous owner was just straightforward. Hey, I didn't even bother with it. It's not cheap. And I said, no big deal. Well, I called to get it replaced. And I realized, whoa, this is not cheap, right? This is an expensive project. And so I said to Jaden, don't worry about it. We're going to order one, and I'm going to replace it. And so sure enough, we ordered a headlight. I went to YouTube, got started, and I quickly learned that to replace a simple headlight would require me to take off the entire grille. Right? So I had to get underneath the car. I had to take this thing apart. About 90 minutes to 2 hours of work. So I finally get all of this off. I start taking off the headlight, and that's when I learned that the person who sold it to us, great person, that they did not let us know they had upgraded the headlight. So it was not what was standard, so I had to put it all back. And I had to order the upgraded headlight. So the upgraded one came, took it all off again, 90 minutes to 2 hours. Get all off. Didn't realize that the new headlight was missing one little cable. I had to put it all together again, and I had to order that cable. And eventually it came, took it off a third time. Ladies and gentlemen, it works. Thank you, YouTube. And thank you, patient. Right? Just being patient helps. So our world, not lacking information, but of course, we're significantly lacking when it comes to processing information available. Every one of us, man, we could put a long list of names together that we're like, man, they were super knowledgeable. And because they had so much knowledge in business, because they had so much knowledge in finance, because they had so much knowledge on technology, because they had so much knowledge in their field, they were able to accumulate large amounts of money, large amounts of fame or power and success. But because they lacked wisdom, they shipwrecked their lives. So, man, they made it far, and then they posted something stupid on social media, and it cost them in a big way. Man, they went far in their career, and then they made an impulsive decision that cost them their career. Or man, they were accumulating lots and lots of stuff, and then they did something that caused them to lose their marriage or their family. So here they are with all this stuff, and nobody to share it with. History is filled with stories of really intelligent people doing dumb things, making dumb decisions. Netflix just came out with a documentary recently on Bernie Madoff. Great example, right? Here's a dude super, super smart. Starts off just trading penny stocks, operating an investment firm, he's doing good, but then he starts compromising his character, and he ends up becoming a mastermind behind one of the largest financial frauds in modern history. His decisions tore his family apart. Tore him apart. One of his sons ended up taking their own life because of what their dad did. He destroyed the financial situation of thousands of people. Bernie himself sentenced to 150 years in federal prison, and that's where he died. His decisions didn't just destroy his life, destroyed the lives of other people. Now, here's the deal. It's easy to dismiss Bernie, right? It's like, dear God, that's dramatic. That's a shocking story. And we probably have a couple of our own dramatic and shocking, not that dramatic or shocking, right? We've got our own stories like that. But I'm telling you, it's usually not the dramatic and shocking decisions that shipwreck our life. Often, the ones that shipwreck our life are the series of just small decisions that just keep leading us down a path that take us to a place where we do not want to go. That's why we need wisdom. And if you've been at Great Lakes Church for a while, you know we talk about wisdom a lot. It's such an important topic. And we say that a wise person is someone who lives today with tomorrow in mind. In fact, we just talked about this a couple weeks ago. Just throughout this definition, right? A wise person is someone who understands all of life is connected. So they understand what happened in the past is somehow connected to the present. It impacts what's happening today. And the decisions I'm making today somehow are connected to the future. And so what a wise person does is they consider the repercussions of their decisions, right? They're looking at the big picture and they're walking in that direction, saying, that's the picture that I want for my life. A wise person is someone who's able to notice patterns. So patterns in marriage, patterns in finance, pattern in friendships, parenting, career, maybe something with character. They notice patterns and they act accordingly. So I've got plenty of friends who do not drink alcohol. And it's not because they don't like the taste of alcohol, and it's not because they think it's wrong. It's not because they think it's so evil. It's just because they grew up in environments where they watched some of the people they love the most destroy their lives with alcohol, and they just said, for me, it's a wise decision to stay away from that. Wise people see patterns and act accordingly. This is why people who are in their 60s and 70s and 80s, right, most of the time, they make much better decisions than people in their 20s. Well, why is that? It's because they've had several decades to see and identify and notice patterns, and they just said, based on everything I see, I think it's a better decision to follow this pattern and go in this direction. Well, a foolish person isn't like that. A foolish person doesn't really pay attention to patterns. A foolish person is someone who lives for the moment. A foolish person is someone who lives as if life were disconnected. Right? So they say what they want to say, they do what they want to do, they go wherever they want. They never think about the future consequences of their actions. They're just living life and they're just spontaneous, impulsive. Now, I don't care what your temperament is. I don't care what your personality is. We all have something in us. I'm telling you, we all do. We all have something in us that at the right time with the right group of people, we can get caught up in the moment. Last week, I was at a Chris Tomlin concert at Willow Creek Church in Barrington, Illinois. All right? Chris did a great job, and we sing a lot of his songs around here. It was just a great, great concert. If you have never been to Willow Creek Church, they have got a massive campus. I mean, this place is is unreal how big it is, right? Their auditorium seats like 7,000 people, just huge. Well, 3 years ago, Willow Creek went through a really big leadership transition. They got a new pastor in, and I've never met him. I know his name's Dave Dummett, right? And so I've seen pictures of him before. I would recognize him. But I'm at this concert, and I'm hanging out in the lobby, and there's lots of noise and lots of chaos. And one of my buddies called, Ben Sigmund. Ben calls me, and while I'm in the lobby, and so I just got to find a place where I could talk. And so what happens is I walk out of this lobby area that's packed with people into this area of the building that's blocked off. And there's security there, but the key to life is always act like you know what you're doing. So I just waved at security, I walked past it, and I'm standing in this lobby, and I'm walking back in this area off the lobby, and I'm walking back and forth, pacing, talking to Ben, and I look up, and here is this guy who looks like Dave Dummett and his wife walking kind of, right past me. And so I say to my buddy Ben, I said, hold on. I said, hey, are you Dave? He goes, yes. I said, Ben, hold on. I walk over to him. I say, Dave Nelson, I pastor Great Lakes Church right across the border in Kenosha, Wisconsin. I said, man, we have a lot of mutual friends. I said, this person and Ben Sigmund. I said, matter of fact, I'm talking to Ben right now. Hey, why don't you talk to him? And so he takes this phone and he kind of looks at it and he looks at me. This is my introduction to the guy. And he looks down and he says, hi, Ben. And he talked for about 2 minutes, and the whole time I'm thinking, that was really rude. That was this is really awkward. And so he gets done, and you can tell he wants to get out of there. He's like, all right, thanks. Nice to meet you, Dave. And he is out of there. I'm like, what just happened? How did I get so caught up in the moment? Here's the deal. We all have an impulsive side to us. We all times we're just not thinking things through. We're just, caught up in a different world. A fool is someone who lives that way. A fool isn't a bad person. They're just immature. They lack perspective, right? They're never waiting for the other options. They're just taking what's in front of them. Because in the mind of a fool, everything is equally important. For the fool, the immediate consequences are really the only consequences that matter. Fools do not think through the impact of their decisions. They may know the difference between right and wrong, but they couldn't care less. Someone may stand in front of them and say, hey, the path you're on is not going to lead to where you think it's going to lead. I'm telling you, you're going to regret this. And they keep walking anyways. And King Solomon writes about these kind of people. Now, as I mentioned earlier, throughout his book, Solomon personifies wisdom as a woman. This woman who's knocking, who's trying to get our attention, who is calling out to us. And so he writes this about Lady Wisdom, or it says, Lady Wisdom is calling out and says to the fool, I called you so often, but you wouldn't come. I reached out to you, but you paid no attention. You ignored my advice and rejected the correction I offered. Lady Wisdom is saying, man, I want to connect with you. I want a friendship with you. But the fool says, nope, I'm going to do my own thing. Every single day, you and I are confronted with opportunities and invitations and decisions. And in that moment, wisdom is not about how much we know and how much experience we've had. It's about recognizing patterns. It's about knowing how to process information and then choosing the right path. Most of the unwise decisions in my life, guys, it wasn't that I didn't have information. It wasn't that I didn't have experience. It was, I want to do this anyways. Because I was emotionally attached to something farther down the path. So I'm just going to keep going in that direction. Whenever there is a path in front of us, whenever there's an opportunity, whenever there is an invitation of some sort, the most important thing we can learn to do is just to pause and ask ourselves a very important question. It's a pivotal question. It's a life-changing question. The question is this. All right, in this moment, with this opportunity, with this decision, what is the wise thing for me to do? Most people don't ask that, right? Most people look in front of them and say, well, is this wrong? And then they just say, well, if it's not wrong, it must be right. But if we're self-aware and if we're really honest with ourselves, guys, most of the regrets we have in our life started out with a series of decisions that we could have argued in that moment, there's nothing wrong with this. Right? I talk to parents all the time. I've experienced this. Where you get to a point, your kids are out of your house, and you're looking back saying, man, I regret not spending more time with my kids. I wish I would have taken more advantage of that time. But while they're in the house, you're working hard. And here's the thing, you justify it because there's nothing wrong with working hard. And there's nothing wrong with saying this is a season. I got to prove myself. I got to get ahead. This is what it takes to put food on the table. Right? There's nothing wrong with that. But then you get caught up and you just live it day after day after day to eventually you get to the point where you're like, oh, I have some regrets surrounding this. Just because there's nothing wrong with it doesn't mean that your decisions are taking you towards the picture of your preferred future. So the question we need to learn to ask is, what is the wise thing for me to do in this situation? Now that's a very different question than foolish people ask, right? Because foolish people are obsessed with questions like, well, is it legal? Is it moral? Is it permissible? Because they're living for the moment. So the foolish person always wants to know, how close can I get to the line without crossing it? How close can I get to the line without it being unethical or immoral? How much debt can I get into without having, before I have to ask for another raise? Right? That's the fool. But people looking at the big picture, they see life as connected. They're constantly living today and making decisions today with tomorrow in mind. And so they're asking the question, what is the wise thing for me to do? What's the wise thing for me to do with my money? What's the wise thing for me to do with my free time? What's the wise thing for me to do with the opportunities in front of me? What's the wise thing for me to do as it's connected to my character in this season? Not is it consensual, not did the bank say I was pre-approved, not was I invited to participate, not does it feel okay right now. What is the wise thing to do? And the reason that this particular question is so important is because, quite honestly, most of the issues we deal with in life are not moral and ethical issues. They're not right and wrong issues, right? Most of the issues we're confronted with, come on, where should I live? Who should I marry? Should my kids attend public school or private school? Should they be homeschooled? What should I do for a career? Should I buy a used car, new car? What should I do in my free time this weekend? Those aren't right and wrong type of answers. It's just you do what you want to do. But the question would be, what's the wise thing for me to do in this season based on where I'm at? Life is filled with all sorts of questions that do not have simple yes or no answers, which is why we need wisdom. And King Solomon assures us that if you live a life guided by wisdom, you won't limp or stumble as you run. I'm guessing all of us would agree with King Solomon. We'd agree with his words, not because they're just in the Bible, not just because of the reputation he had for wisdom, but because we've lived this. Right? In the seasons that we rejected wisdom, in the seasons that we put off the advice, in the seasons that we did not seek out counsel, we found ourselves limping. I think all of us can point to a season in our life where we limped through something, right? Limping through our marriage, limping through our career, limping in our parenting, limping in our relationship with our kids, limping in our finances. We found ourselves limping in our health, limping in our faith. Maybe that's where you're currently at. Maybe right now, today, you're currently in a season where you're like, man, I'm limping in this area. And the good news is that doesn't have to be the ongoing story of your life. Regardless of what choices you made in the past, I want you to know that God has the power and wants to redeem those choices. God wants to give you wisdom that if you choose to apply it will shape your future. So it is never too late to go down a new path. God never works with what should have been. He works with the reality of what is. So regardless of what season of life you're in, this series is all about wisdom and on our end, trying to do our best to help give principles and habits that if you put them into your life will help you aggressively move forward into the next season. All right? But all of what we're going to talk about comes down to decision making. And the decisions we're making today matters. And here's why. Because we make our decisions, and then our decisions make us. Right? So we make decisions about what to eat, and then what we eat affects our health. We make decisions about who we're going to hang out with, and then who we hang out with begins to impact who we're becoming. We make decisions about what we're putting into our minds and what we're putting in our hearts and the kind of entertainment and the kind of, the kind of media that's going in our mind. And then eventually that begins to shape our worldview. Our life is the sum total of the decisions we made. Look at your life. It's a result of the decisions we made, for the most part. Some of it's the result of decisions other people have made. So with that in mind, I want you to consider asking yourself this question. Where are my decisions taking me? Where are my decisions taking me? As you evaluate your life, as you look at your life, do you like the direction you're headed? Because this is what wisdom does. It suggests that we should pause from time to time and ask ourselves, do I want to end up where this path is most likely leading? And if the answer is no, well then let's take action. If you have some concerns, do something about it. King Solomon, he writes about this and he says, a prudent person foresees danger and takes precautions. The simpleton, the naive, the fool goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. So when you look at the path in front of you or that you're on, do you see any warning signs? Is there anybody saying, hey, you need to make better decisions? Or hey, the path you're on is not going to lead you where you think it's going to go? Most people don't do this, right? Most of us, let's just be honest. We look around, if there's enough people on the same path we're on, we just keep going. We feel good because we're in a company of a whole lot of people. Well, if everybody's on this path, why should I be concerned? Now I'm going to ask you a very direct question. Do you really want your life to end up looking like the lives of most people? I came across different studies this week, and I was looking up different stats, and I'm not always throwing out stats, but these are important, right? Well, a study just came out in January, reveals 64% of Americans right now are living paycheck to paycheck. Do you want to be on that same path? The average American right now spends 7 hours and 4 minutes a day in front of a screen, TV, computer, phone, right? Do you want to be down that path? The average American unhappy in their job. On average, the more someone makes, the less they give. That's not a church thing, it's not a faith thing, not a religious thing, it's a thing. The higher your income, right? The higher your income, the less generous you are. Do you want that for your life? So let me ask you again. Do you want your life to end up where most people's lives end up? If not, then you've got to make different decisions. You've got to say, this is the path I'm on, but I'm going to make decisions that lead me down this path. I'm going to make decisions that lead me down this path. And just know when you do that, there's going to be tension. Not everybody's going to like your choices. Not everybody's going to like your decisions. People are going to tell you, I don't align with you. I don't think you're doing the right thing. But man, with every opportunity that comes our way, we need to learn to ask the question, what is the wise thing for me to do? And then, as part of that question, what is the wise thing for me to do? Let me give you a decision-making filter to help you. Now, it's not unique to me. I didn't come up with this, but it is incredibly helpful. Here it is. We've talked about this in the past, right? Decision-making filter. Number one, my past experiences. You have a unique past. Nobody has your history but you. Your history predisposes you to certain things. So in light of my past experiences, what is the wise thing for me to do? If you have a tendency to make financial decisions that complicate your life, you need to ask, in light of my past financial experiences, what is the wise thing for me to do right now? In light of my dating history, in light of how I've abused alcohol, in light of my tendency to be careless with my words, in light of my inclination to say yes all the time, in light of the fact that I like to spend every evening watching TV for hours on it, what is the wise thing for me to be doing? That's the first part of the filter. Second part, my current circumstances. In light of where I'm at emotionally right now, in light of where I'm at relationally right now, in light of where I'm at in life, what is the wise thing for me to do? So if you're in this season of stress and pressure and it feels like your kids are tap dancing at every last nerve that you have and everything you do is talking in cadence, get over here right now. They're gonna hurt me more than it's gonna hurt you. At that point, you need to step back and say, you know what? I'm a little emotional, and when I'm emotional, I react emotionally. So it's important to ask the question, in light of my current circumstances, where I'm at in life right now, what is the wise thing for me to do? And again, we're going to make decisions that will not make sense to everybody else, but what we're trying to do is safeguard our life. Third part of the filter, my future hopes and dreams. In light of what you want your marriage to look like in the future, what's the wise thing to do right now? In light of where you want to be financially someday, what's the wise thing to do right now? In light of the kind of man or woman you want to marry someday, what's the wise thing to be doing right now? When it comes to the type of person you want to be in your character, what is the wise thing for me right now to be feeding my mind and my heart when it comes to books and media and entertainment? And guys, here's the deal. It's never too late. God doesn't work with what should have been. He works with what is. Never too late. So I'll just straightforward, man, I have definitely some parenting regrets, especially with my two daughters, right? And the reason why is they grew up at a time period where this church was really young. So I dedicated lots and lots of time to building the church and working with leaders and just moving things forward. And I feel like I lost a lot of those key years. But over the last couple years, I've refocused myself on the dad I want to be. And I just made the decision, you know what? I can let some things go, but I want to make sure my daughters know they're loved and they're valued, and I'm spending time with them. One of them works at a restaurant in Milwaukee. The other works at a restaurant in Lake Geneva. So I spent a whole lot of gas money and a whole lot of money on food. They got to work at restaurants. Like, come on, right? But I go and I see them, and I talk to them, I hang out with them, and I make sure they know that they are loved and they are valued. And I remind them regularly, I'm not your bank account, but I do love you. Guys, I'm not alone. Right? Unwise decisions we've made in the past have robbed us of what we could be experiencing today. And so today needs to be a new day, and we say, I'm going to make different decisions. And the crazy thing is when we made the unwise decisions, we could have argued the Bible wasn't against it. It wasn't immoral. It wasn't illegal. Everybody was doing it. God needed me to build the church. We're getting this thing going, right? So hold on. In light of my past experiences, my current circumstances, and my future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing for me to do? That's what this series is about. It's taking the words of King Solomon seriously when he writes this. Get all the advice and instruction you can so you will be wise the rest of your life. Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, I pray that in the coming weeks, you would open our minds, open our hearts, so that as we hear principles and we accumulate knowledge, we would have the wisdom to be able to know how to apply what we're learning. We'd have the courage to implement different habits into our life, and that we would begin to move down the path that you have for each and every one of us. We pray in Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks for joining us here at Great Lakes Church. Again, my name is Carson, and I'm so glad that you chose to share some time with us this week. We hope something in this talk was meaningful to you, encouraging to you, and maybe even something worth writing down that you can go share with a friend. If you'd like to get involved, maybe join us at one of our physical locations in Southeast Wisconsin, or just be a part of our many other goings-on our social platforms or events in the area. Check out greatlakeschurch.com.